Story 1. The Silent Village. The Arrival. The narrow, winding road leading to the village of Ravenskirk was surrounded by dense forests, casting long shadows that seemed to move with the setting sun. The air grew colder as the group of friends approached their destination, a sense of unease settling over them. They had heard the rumors, tales of a haunted village abandoned years ago where no one dared to stay after dark. Yet, the thrill of exploring something unknown, something forbidden, had drawn them here. As they entered the village, they were greeted by silence. The houses, once home to families, now stood empty, their windows like hollow eyes watching them. The village square was overgrown with weeds, and a dilapidated fountain stood in the center, dry and cracked. The only sound was the crunch of gravel under their tires as they parked near an old, abandoned house. "This place gives me the creeps," Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. "Come on, it's just an old village," Mark replied, trying to sound confident. "We'll check it out, maybe take some pictures, and then head back tomorrow." But as they stepped out of the car, a chill ran down their spines. They couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The first night. The house they chose to stay in was one of the largest in the village, with peeling paint and broken windows. Inside, the air was thick with dust, and the floorboards creaked with every step. They set up their sleeping bags in the living room, trying to make the best of the situation. That night, as they sat around a makeshift campfire, the wind howled outside, rattling the windows. The light from the fire cast eerie shadows on the walls, making the old portraits on the walls appear to move. They tried to laugh it off, but the unease only grew. As the hours passed, they began to hear strange noises, a faint whisper, the sound of footsteps on the stairs, and then a loud bang from the attic above. The group froze, their eyes wide with fear. "Did you hear that?" Jake asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's probably just the wind," Emily suggested, though her voice quivered with doubt. But deep down, they all knew that something was very wrong. The house, the village, there was something here, something that didn't want them to leave. The strange encounters. The next morning, they decided to explore the village in the daylight, hoping that the sun would dispel the fear that had taken root in their hearts. But the village was just as unsettling in the daylight. The streets were empty, and the buildings were in various states of decay. They found no signs of life, no animals, no birds, nothing but the rustling of leaves in the wind. As they wandered through the village, they came across an old church at the edge of the woods. The doors were ajar, and inside they found a dusty altar and broken pews. In one of the corners, an old woman sat hunched over, her back to them. She mumbled something under her breath, her voice low and raspy. "Excuse me," Mark said, stepping forward cautiously. "Do you live here?" The woman slowly turned to face them, her eyes milky white, as if she were blind. "You shouldn't have come here," she whispered. "The village is cursed. Leave before night falls, or you will never leave at all." The friends exchanged uneasy glances, but before they could ask her anything else, the woman stood and shuffled out of the church, disappearing into the woods. Her warning echoed in their minds as they made their way back to the house. The Frauen. That night, the atmosphere in the house was tense. No one spoke of the old woman or her warning, but the fear lingered in the air. They decided to sleep in shifts, keeping watch in case anything unusual happened. Around midnight, it was Jake's turn to keep watch. The others had fallen into an uneasy sleep, but Jake found it hard to stay awake. He paced around the room, trying to shake off the drowsiness, when he heard a soft knock at the door. He froze, his heart racing. He slowly approached the door, peering through the peephole, but saw nothing. Hesitating for a moment, he unlocked the door and opened it, only to be met with darkness. A gust of cold wind swept into the room, extinguishing the fire in the fireplace. Jake stepped outside, looking around, but there was no one there. He turned to go back inside, but the door slammed shut behind him, trapping him outside. Panic surged through him as he pounded on the door, but the house remained silent. When the others woke up in the morning, they found the door wide open and Jake missing. The only trace of him was a message scratched onto the wall near the door. "They're coming for you."